afternoon, everyone. Thanks for attending this webinar. I'm Gaojun at Preferred by Nature at the China office. It is a great pleasure to give a short presentation on timber risks in China and mitigation options. Before I get started, I would like to invite you to answer this question. What challenges do you face when assessing the risk when sourcing from China? I think now you can see the choice on your screen.
We got the result, and I think, just go ahead, and then the important thing is we can see your slide and hear you, so please go ahead.
Today, I'm going to talk through these topics. I'm about to give a short overview of Chinese forest sector. Then talk about timber legality risks in China and the mitigations. Then the transparency and traceability challenges in Chinese supply chain. For last point, other considerations on due diligence, I will hand it over to my colleague David, who also has much experience on Chinese supply chains. David will add a couple of points related to China from the European companies' perspective. Let me get started with the overview of Chinese forest sector, which would help you understand what's happening in China. Normally, China conducts the forest resource survey every 5 years based on the 9th National Forest Resource Survey conducted from 2014 to 2018. There are a total of 220 million hectare forest, which accounts almost 23% of China national territory, including 6.41 million hectare bamboo forest. As you can see on the chart on the right, the forest area is increasing steadily over the past 2 decades, mostly because much non-forest land has been forested, even on the deserts. And more areas are being designated as national parks or nature reserves, which are protected from harvesting, of course. Among them, there are about 64% natural forest, and the rest is the plantation. The forest stock is more than 17 billion cubic meters. More exciting, China commits to strong climate targets at the Climate Ambition Summit in last December, I think, including increasing forest stock by 6 billion cubic meters above 2005 levels. Now, at that time, the forest stock is 13.7 billion cubic meters. In our risk assessment, we categorize the timber source into 3 types: plantation, natural forest, and bamboo, because they are subject to different applicable regulations and in different situations. For example, the bamboo is managed and harvested in entirely different way. As a result, they hold differentiating risk characteristics at some categories of laws or regulations. So let's look at the first source type, plantations. Plantation is the major source of the timber from China. Around 80% timber in China is harvested in plantations, according to the harvest quota for the past 5 years. The provinces colored on the map on the bottom right of your screen are the main sources of plantations. More than 70% of them are managed by individual farmers or stakeholders. A harvest permit is required, except for trees which grow on non-forest land, such as agricultural land, house yards, or other private land. Poplar is the most common plantation species, which grows on the non-forest land. In China, the common plantation species includes eucalyptus, poplar, paulownia, Chinese fir. On the picture on the top right, the timber harvester was harvesting eucalyptus in Guangxi province, the south of China. For your interest. The second source type is natural forest. Firstly, I have to point out the natural forest is a very limited source of wood supply due to the natural forest logging ban. Around 20% of timber harvested in China are from the natural forest. For the natural forest, about 53% of them are owned and managed by the state forest management entities. Mostly important, non-commercial harvesting is permitted for natural forest. Only non-commercial harvesting like thinnings, century harvesting is allowed. But there are limitations to the dimensions or the size of the trees to be harvested. Harvest permit is always required. For natural forest. As you can see on the map, northeast of China is the main source of timber from thinnings or century cut in natural forest. So the third source type is the bamboo forest. Main source of bamboo are the subtropical areas, including these regions or provinces, as you can see on the map. China, I think China has the largest area of bamboo forest, accounting for around 20% of the bamboo forest in the world. Most of bamboo are managed by individual farmers, smallholders. A harvest permit is not required for the bamboo forest, except the bamboo grows within the nature reserves. In China, the bamboo sector is quite, I would say, commercialized and industrialized. Almost any wood product can be also made of bamboo instead, such as like bamboo furniture, flooring, even bamboo pulp and paper. As I know, the exports of bamboo products from China is increasing rapidly in recent years, but because it's seen as a sustainable source for wood or bamboo products. Yeah, for bamboo products. And as our understanding, the solid bamboo product is within the EUTR scope if the product is listed in the Annex 1 of the EUTR. Now let's look at the timber harvest volume and main sources. As you can see from the chart on the left, the harvest volume in China appears to remain steady during the past period, past 7 years. And as you can see, the pie chart on the right, the top 5 provinces in harvest volume produced 70% timber in China in 2019. And in my opinion, it perfectly match with the availability of the most common plantation species. For example, most of the eucalyptus grow in Guangxi and Guangdong province. They are the top 2 timber source. Yunnan also has the eucalyptus and the pine. Fujian province has the eucalyptus and Chinese fir. Poplar grows everywhere in Shandong province, and other province in north or east of China. Now look at figures about China's timber imports. It is estimated more than 60% of wood that is transformed in China is imported from other countries. The two charts on this slide for imported logs and sawn timber in 2019. While more than half of the timber is imported from low-risk countries, including New Zealand, North America, and Europe, but a big percentage of timber are imported from high-risk countries. More than 20% of logs and more than 60% sawn timber are imported from the countries with low CPI, less than 40. It means there is the high level of corruption in the country of origin, or high legality risk. Most of them, if it is the high risk, the country will be colored in red in our sourcing hub, as Dieter showed a bit earlier. The high-risk countries within the top 10 origin countries include Russia, Papua New Guinea, Thailand, Solomon Islands, Ukraine, and others. Particularly, 12% of logs were import. 12% of logs, and I think 48% of sawn timber were imported from Russia in 2019. In my presentation later, I'm going to talk about the transparency and traceability issues related to imported timber within Chinese supply chains. Now let's move on to the key section for my presentation. I think timber legality risks in China. Yeah, as Dieter mentioned earlier, we just published the second version of the timber risk assessment for China on our sourcing hub this year. In the updated risk assessment, we identified specified risk, which means it's not a low risk, at 6 subcategories of loss. The score we calculated is 77 points. Basically, it means the risk of timber harvest in China is medium risk, not high risk, I would say. So what and where is the risk we identify for each source type in China? This graphics is the summary of the risk conclusion for each source type. I would like to mention that the updated risk assessment for China has extended to imported timber and supply chain transparency and traceability issues. So on this graphics, you can see more subcategories. Okay. So now let's look at the risks at the first level we identified for China. 2 risks identified related to the land tenure and management rights. First one, the forest tenure certificate is not registered to the land contracted or leased by the forest management enterprises, and unlawful transfer of forest tenure of plantations between the forest management enterprise and the local community. Please note the 2 risks are not a large-scale issue because they are applicable only to the land for plantations contracted by forest management enterprise in in this specific province in the south of China, such as Hainan, Guangxi, yeah, etc. Another risk related to the management planning is the forest management plan may not be implemented properly, but it is only applicable to the state forest. Okay, at this category, health and safety, the risks are lack of training and awareness of personal protective equipment of the workers or PPE. Lack of PPE in the forest activities. They are only applicable to plantation and natural forest. At the category legal employment, the risk is lack of employment contracts and injury insurance for forest workers. Now let's look at the legality risk at the supply chain level, which I just explained the risks at the forest level. Now is the legality risks at the supply chain level. The first one is the VAT, value-added tax, is not paid appropriately by the processors or traders in the supply chain. In other words, it is not applicable at the forest level. Another legality risk is related to customs regulations. The exporter would misreport the tree species from natural forest when exporting, largely because the custom office is checking the origin of the species, which is commonly from natural forest more strictly. This picture is the export custom declarations document for exporting. Okay, and there are risks related to the CITES species, forced reporting of imported CITES species, which is only applicable to imported timber. And the imported or exported CITES species will be not accompanied by CITES permit. Here, I just want to mention that the risk for bamboo is much lower than plantation and natural forest. There is only the risk related to the legal employment at the forest level and VAT payment at the supply chain level. Now let's see what risk mitigation options there. Before I start this section, I will invite you to answer another question. What kind of risk mitigation measures are you implementing for Chinese supply chains? It's a multiple choice question. Yeah, it's interesting, and most of the operators collect the additional information for mitigations, I think, which is the easiest way. But some of the companies like 30 more than 30% of the audience answer the on-site verification audits, and more than 60% of the audience said use the certification to mitigate the risk, and some others select the timber testing. But I assume some of you select multiple choice. So probably your companies are taking a couple of them as the mitigation measures for Chinese supply chain.
quite high range of or use of timber testing. I'm surprised to see it's that high. That's actually interesting.
Yeah,
So
it's interesting.
very widespread. Yeah.
So just to flag you again, we created the risk mitigation guide on mitigation guide. This picture is the cover page of this guide. You can have an idea how it looks like. This picture, you can see the structure of this document. For each category, we have a table with 4 columns: risk identified, when the risk is applicable, indicator of legal compliance, and the mitigation options. All identified risks and the corresponding mitigation options are described in this guidance. In next few slides, I will just select a few risks and talk about the mitigation options. Okay, let's look at the examples. Okay, please note I just took 3 columns from the mitigation guide to save space on the slides. Also, I will just focus on the column mitigation options. So okay, you can stay focused on the content in the red rectangle. The content for mitigation options you see in my here in my presentation is just what I summarized. For details, please check our guide. The first example is the risk related to land tenure and management rights. For this risk, there are 3 options: review and verify documents, internet search, and consultation. Check the documents, including the forest tenure certificates, forest leasing or transfer contract, harvesting permit. How that looks like. You can check our document guide. My colleague David will explain later. And search for sources of information in the public to see if there is any evidence of community conflict or dispute over the land tenure or use rights. In case that the internet search or other information source shows the concerns, implement the consultation with local communities and other stakeholders. In addition, FSC or PFC certification can help mitigate the risk based on our evaluation to the 2 certification schemes. I would say the FSC or PFC certification can help address all the risks identified at the forest level. So here is another example related to health and safety. The risks is lack of availability of PPE and training in the use of the PPE. Basically, for this risk, we only suggest on-site verification, visit of the forest and harvesting sites to verify that PPE or self-training has been conducted, the procedures are in place. And during the on-site visit, review the documents like procedures, training records, insurance for workers, purchase records like invoice for PPE. Also, again, FSC or PFC certification can help mitigate this risk. For the risk related to VAT payments, the mitigation is quite straightforward and easy to adjust, I think, because the operator can just check the VAT invoice from Chinese companies, which indicates the VAT payment. The VAT invoice is issued through the government system. You can see the link here. This is the official database to verify the authenticity of the VAT invoice, yeah, you can check our document guide and how to verify it. Okay, from here, I will stop talking about mitigations. For the mitigation for other risks, please read our mitigation guide. And of course, if you have any questions, you can, yeah, feel free to ask us. Yeah. So I would jump to the last section for my presentation. Transparency and traceability challenges in Chinese supply chain. The first issue is the risk of false declaration of origin, species, or falsification of documentation by Chinese processors or traders. It means species or origins of timber material may not be declared properly or correctly. In addition, the supply chain document would be falsified or fraudulent. So, yeah, it is important to verify the document through the database if available. Here, another two issues: risk of timber mixing in production and trade, and supply chain mapping is particularly difficult. I think the two risks are linked to the one I just mentioned on the last slide. Yeah, the false declaration of the species and origins. Okay, it means it is possible that the Chinese companies mix the declared species with other undeclared species or sources with different or higher risk profile. A number of investigations, NGO reports, including timber testing, have disclosed this issue or support this view. Okay, another issue is the risk of false declaration in certification. The investigation made by either certification schemes owner, like the FSC, you can find a lot of information on the website, and other NGOs found a number of cases where the products sold by Chinese companies with FS claim or other certificate claim was actually made of non-certified materials or mixed with non-certified materials. Okay, yeah. For this issue, my colleague David will dig into more details about it in his presentation. Okay, so what mitigation measures the operators can take to address these issues in Chinese supply chains? We understand that addressing these issues are quite challenging, probably. There are more details about the mitigation options in the mitigation guide. Here I just highlight the key points from there. From our point of view, for operators, it is very important to have confidence and to justify species and origins of products with sufficient supporting evidence, such as transaction document, invoice, or other document back to the forest, or at least the exporter in the country of origin if you are using the timber from other countries but processed in China. And how you evaluate the relevance and validity of the document provided by Chinese suppliers. For example, are the documents relevant to a product? Can the documents cross-reference to each other, such invoice, packing list, certificate of origin, phytosanitary cards, etc. All the informations on this document can match to each other. Okay, and how verify if a document is authentic? Is there any database to verify documents? Yeah, the two pictures you can see here on the slides show the verification result for a certificate of origin from France. It indicated the name of the Chinese importer was changed. So probably the materials declared in the supply chains are from other countries. I don't know where it's really come from. Okay, so other mitigations include if the materials product is declared as certified, it is necessary to map the full supply chain, ensure the valid certificate claim on the sales documents at each tier in China. Last but not least, the operator should justify a low risk of mixing in the supply chain, adjusting in the supply chain. I understand, to mitigate the risk of mixing in a robust way could be challenging in most cases, I would say. But there are still some actions to take, such as volume reconciliation, on-site visits, third-party visits, timber testing, etc. Volume reconciliation means the operators needs to check if the volume from the supply chain on the assessment is sufficient to ensure the needed input volume for your product manufactured in the Chinese entities. On-site visit can be conducted by the operators Chinese office combined with other checks like the product quality check or other types of supply visits like social audit. Of course, if the operator has no local resource, the risk of mixing can be evaluated by third party together with other legality issues, if there are any. Another option is timber testing. David will talk more details about it. So last is there a question for you, but for myself, is there any other options even better or more effective? We need to think about it, like if there is any, agent technology to on the traceability, to track the supply chain, like the blockchain, which is really a hot topic nowadays. Okay, this slide brings me to the end for my presentation. Thanks for listening.